So now let's move to the first panel discussion on leading with authenticity, with what leaders expect from Gen Z and vice versa. Let's welcome to the dais our moderator, Dr. Sanjay Muthal, member HRM Committee, Bombay Chamber, and CEO, Argolynx Consulting LLP, and our esteemed panelists, Shefali, Kohli, CHRO, Chemicals, Filament, Yarn, and Insulators, Aditya Birla Group, Reena Tyagi, Chief People and Organization Officer, Generali Central Life Insurance, Amit Chincholikar, Group President, HR, Hinduja Group Limited. And over to you, Dr. Muthal.
Good morning. Morning. Everybody awake? Thank you. I don't know what can we do now, Shefali, Reena and Amit, because Adil and Rui has covered everything. Defining Gen Z, their characteristics, their expectations, their worldview. So maybe good idea is to just coffee and go.
There's no coffee on the table.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. Having said so, I just want to begin our deliberations by a couple of facts that are staring at us. Amit, can you? Yeah. One is, I was just looking at some statistics. 47% of our workforce by 2035 will be Gen Zs. And more interestingly, 45% of GDP by 2035 will come out of Gen Z. Now, if that's the future of our organizations and a country in that way, are we here to nurture that talent well so that it contributes to what it is supposed to contribute? To me, sometimes I feel that a lot of us, and I'm talking about people of my vintage, we bring probably that parent mindset to manager's role. So the parent mindset at home is, "Arey, ye sunta hi nahi meri." He is in a different planet. Anything that the instant gratification and so on and so forth. Are we bringing that to work? And in a manner of speaking, fostering, or not fostering is the wrong word, forcing that our worldview to be superimposed on the worldview of a Gen Z, and then creating the functionalities in the system. And if we are, then we have a challenge and a problem. To me, as student of HR, I think many places these are coming to the fore, primarily because we are deciding on their behalf without their participation. With our great study of that generation, we think because they are digital native, they are tech savvy, they need instant gratification, they need dialogue more than instruction, I will create ecosystem, policies, etc., that would suit them. But where is participation of them into creating those policies? Are we therefore neglecting the basic tenet of participation as a leader for creating something for somebody and saying, "This is what I can give you, please have this and carry on with your work"? Some kind of a dysfunctionalities I do see around happening. And therefore it's a good time to pause today and think about what are we exactly doing, what are exactly this bunch of people are. And as Amit, you were saying that many of us are deciding what is Gen Z just by their age or their date of birth. There may be Gen Zs in Gen X. There may be Gen X in Gen Zs. Are we able to decipher that very clearly? And what kind of management style or supervision, as it were, that you are now as a leader looking at? Fundamentally, two things I see that as a difference to start proceedings. The basic tenet of, and Adil, probably you'll bear with me, is the mindset. People of our vintage grew up with scarcity as mindset and brought that to work. Gen Z is about abundance as mindset. And therefore, the whole world for them is a great place to work, is a world that is full of opportunities, is full of positivity. And many of us in our generation, were more about protecting turf, keeping my area clean, doesn't matter about what happens to anybody else, and so on and so forth. More instructions led than participative, so on and so forth. So, Reena, I want to begin with you because BFSI as a sector continues to hire huge amount of Gen Z talent for your work. So, what are the defining traits that you see in Gen Z employees, and how should leaders adapt their management style to work effectively with them?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So I think traits we spoke about of Gen Zs, we all spoke about it, that very values driven, they want to see a larger purpose. Obviously digital is something that they are very comfortable with. In fact, they were born with that, right? They don't understand a world which is without digital. They're not scared of speaking their mind, non-hierarchical. They would not, so if they need to speak out their mind, challenge the mindsets of their managers, and we have had very live examples in our organization of that. So I think we spoke about that. I think what we are doing as leaders is something I would like to possibly share. More than Gen Z, I would say it's more multi-generational, which is a challenge for us in BFSI today. We have millennials who are already in leadership positions. As Ruhi rightly said, we have 3 generations which are working together. So for us in the organization, I think the first challenge was to have conversations around it. First of all, acceptance that this is a challenge which is looming at us. It is not a transactional challenge where a manager came and said, look, my team member spoke to me so rudely, he was challenging me. It is not that. It is a mindset shift that we wanted. And I know when in our organization we started talking about multi-generational, people said, really? You want to spend time on that? This is, so I think for us the first challenge was awareness. We did create for leaders a program around multi-generational sensitivities. We had fire chats around it where people from various generations were talking to each other. And you know, one of the fireside chat I was doing, and it really came across as there were a lot of insights for me as a leader also, that you know, sometimes I used to get very angry. Why are people playing these WhatsApp messages when they're just sitting next to each other? And it created a lot of angst in me. Why don't you guys talk about it? And when we started having those conversations, one realized that WhatsApp is the preferred mode of communication for them. So there's no need to, so I think there are a lot of acceptances that we as leaders in Gen X or millennials also need to have. So first was that, creating awareness. Second, I think when you have a foundation which is built on inclusivity and you are teaching your managers to have the courage to accept people who are different from you, you've done a bit of groundwork. So we had to kind of train our leaders on more collaborative style of working, rather than telling the members that who were from Gen Z that this is how you're supposed to be doing. I had managers in my own team who would sit down in the morning with them, do a to-do list, and this. That would be a complete failure. And so we needed to have that shift. So which meant a lot of dialogue with them, trying to sensitize. So it's important that we create those communication channels where people can very fearlessly share what they are, what is their style, creating awareness about accepting each other. So that was one of the things. I think the second thing, which is a trend which we started noticing, is obviously, this thing about anxiety, stress. We used to feel very awkward having those conversations really at workplace. If you're suffering from anxiety, how are you going to do your work? But now we've really realized that that's the way of working. These are words Gen Zs, these are experiences that Gen Zs go through. So really having a lot of conversations around mental well-being is another thing that we as leaders have started happening. Third thing, even initiatives like reverse mentoring, that's something which has really worked well for us, because idea is to know each other. And the other day, we launched this reverse mentoring for some of our hypo talent, and we were having this conversation that this reverse mentor, came to me and said, I can teach you how to do makeup. So, so the manager was suddenly kind of taken aback. No, this is not what I want to do. But that's what, they have no boundaries. They have no, this thing for them, blended work life is something that they really look at. So I think creating forums, talking about mental health, having collaborative leadership, having the courage to have very open conversations. I think these are 3-4 things that we, at least I think that we can do.
Thank you for that. Amit, in what way their value system differs from the earlier generation? And if you have to harness that in terms of creating the culture, performance in the organization, what organization should do?
Whenever a body is immersed in water, the telephone rings, right? So, look, I think if you were to look at what is it, and I think we started this whole conversation around the whole concept of authenticity, right? I think most organizations, structures, and the way we have done work for the longest time has focused on what we do. And if you think about it, authenticity really is about who we are. And very often, therefore, I think, we kind of mistake one identity for the other. We seek a lot of solace from the work we do, but that doesn't really define who we are. I think we are now beginning to see that here is the first set of people who are actually able to seamlessly blend these two concepts into one. So who they are matters much more than what they do. So therefore work becomes part of their life, it's not life itself. Now let's look at what shaped their thinking, right? These are people who entered probably at the time, around COVID, difficult times. And these are people who I think have seen a lot more in the last 20 years than most of us would probably have seen in a lifetime. So sometimes I think we don't give them enough credit for everything that they have kind of been through from an experience standpoint, if you will. Then we say that, these people don't value loyalty, right? But if you were to think of it, they have seen what happened to loyalty during COVID, right? So what happens is their loyalty very often tends to be relational. It's not organizational, right? So they are seeking good work. They are seeking opportunity to work with great managers. We brought them up, or they've been brought up in an environment that told them to stand up and talk. It's going to be difficult now to tell them to shut up and sit down. So I think the oxymorons that exist, right, that is there, it's also about how is it that you're able to land messages with young people, right? So one, very famous industry, iconic technology leader said that, young people need to work 70 hours a week. And then someone else said 90 hours a week, right? And we know how Gen Zs or young people in general reacted to that. But if they were to hear the same thing as an inspirational story of a founder who did a startup, who said that beyond a point you stop watching the clock because you are so absorbed in their work. That's a message that inspires them. So it's about the same thing, right? If you were to look at it from the lens that they are kind of trying to approach it, I think it makes a lot of difference. So in my view, I think, and we talk a lot about introducing policies for, Gen Zs. You should, you try to be cool by saying, let's have certain ways in which you can dress. So we are relaxing the dress code policy, especially for the Gen Zs. We are doing, and we talked of upward mentoring and stuff like that. The question is that what Gen Zs really want? Frankly, what they are seeking is, they are seeking authenticity, they are seeking trust, they are seeking transparency. That is something that all of us seek. So the biggest mistake, in my view, to your question, that organizations can actually make is introduce a set of policies that are only for Gen Zs, because they will then appear cosmetic, right? You say you can dress in a particular way, you can work. The point is, if you introduce a policy or a change or a construct, it needs to be such that it is applicable to your workforce at large because it makes business sense. That is what they respect, right? More than anything else. That's point number 2. Good one. Point number 3, I think Reena made a great point about emotional vulnerability, right? That's there. In my view, I think if you look at people who don't, we talk about the importance of mental health and mental well-being. And very often the reaction really is around saying, all these things didn't exist at our time, right? So you need to show emotional fortitude. So wo kya loha tapne se hi, strong banta hai or whatever. I'm saying maybe that's why steel is not a preferred choice of industry for young people anymore, right? The simple point is, I think, we must recognize that saying that I've experienced anxiety is actually not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of absolute strength, right? And I think, again, I keep coming back to this point of authenticity, right? Authenticity is about being able to recognize that you have got to understand that different sets of people have different sets of needs. You need to address them, but the worst thing you can do is make it cosmetic and make it for a, kind of single set of people in some ways. For example, someone, I was just looking at, someone just came and placed the name tags, right? If it was someone from Gen Z or whatever, someone would probably ask the question, why have they been seated this way? Why is it like this? Generally, doesn't the moderator sit in the middle? Then you would say, yeah, but so sometimes the whole belief system around the way people ask questions, right? So sometimes I think we spend a lot of time giving answers. I think the best way to integrate is to make sure that we probably ask more questions. That's the way I would say.
So, thank you. Thank you.
To add to what Amit said, that also, as we said, we can't make policies for Gen Zs. Also, it's an era of hyper-personalization, right? Within product solutions. That's the way to go for us as HR, for our people too. And it is not, again, generation-based. Each of the Gen Z could have a different need, and hence that personal connect of the managers, that trusting relationships, and that open forum where a manager can also come and say that this is what my employee needs, is becoming even far more important than what it was. We've been talking about it for years, but nowadays it's even more important in this multi-generational setup.
Yeah, so I hear openness, I hear authenticity. Shefali, what is the communication approaches that Gen Zs like, and how you in Aditya Birla are using technology to master that?
So I would say, Sanjay, first and foremost, I use a very simple 6C model. 3 C's for what we want to harness in the Gen Zs. 3 C's that we as leaders need to be able to figure out how we are being conscious of those, right? The first for Gen Zs is curiosity. They want to learn. How are we ensuring that each of their assignments are designed for learning? How are they getting upskilled? The second is conscience. They want to be purpose-driven, which is where performance comes from. Purpose should not be only on the walls, and they want it in their job descriptions. And I think that the leaders have to be conscious of when we are building it forward for them. And the third C is definitely courage. And I think Amit talked about it, that probably 20 years ago I didn't have the courage. And I'm amazed that they have it. So why are we not harnessing it? They're expressing themselves, they're talking about what they want. We just need to listen. We just need to be able to personalize, like Reena said, on what they are seeking, and then use that courage that we are bringing to the fore to make the most of what they're bringing to the table. From our end, from the leaders, they are seeking conversations. So I'm not sure if technology is enough. I think they want to be engaged with, they want to be asked, how are you in the authentic space, and not just how are you when the response is, oh, I'm good, but to say, how are you really doing? And therefore, how often are we doing those conversations? How often are we doing check-ins to say, where are you struggling? What would you want? They're then seeking a lot more co-creation. So our coaching style of leadership, where am I able to then create the project for them? So to your point, today on AI as well as digital, I have a Gen Z leading it for us. Because what better than them mentoring us rather than me trying to give them some gyan on how we want to be able to shape digital for the future, right? On communication, important to create forums. So at ABG in chemicals, we've created a space of open hearts, open mind, where we create forums for authentic conversations, talk about biases, talk about, and again, it does not have to be typecasted to say, hey, this is Gen Z and that is Y and that is Z. I think all of us come with a backstory, all of us come with a certain narrative. Yes, in generalities, like you said, Sanjay, they are coming with more abundance, they're coming with instant gratification, they're coming with resources, technology, all of that coming to them so fast that rather, how do we harness and make that productive for ourselves? The same research which they can do in 30 seconds, we probably took 30 months at some points in time. So how are we leveraging some of that to partner with the new ways of functioning that we are building together? So I think on communication, it doesn't take away from the human action. They still want that personalized connect. There is a whole gradient of Gen Zs. Let's not kind of just typecast them into one category because of the stories that they may have from where they come. And how do we then engage more closely to partner on purpose and performance?
Thank you very much.
I think that's a, can I?
Yeah, please.
So I think communication becomes such an important aspect because the normal communication from a workflow process, the question we are always, the question that we are always trying to answer is what is to be done, right? So it is focused around activity, task, orientation. It's built on that, karna kya hai? The question that really is getting asked again is, why are we doing this? So what's the outcome that you're trying to seek? So very often, why are we trying to do this or solve this is a question if you are able to look at. You know, very often you'll be amazed at the kind of responses that you're able to get. And I mean, again, it's a bit of a generalization, but it's because, you know, we are used to asking a question around what is to be done, right? And if the response is, yeah, but why are we doing it this way? We actually don't know why that is, right? And very often that's where I think the deployment of technology, AI, etc., all of that works very well with these set of people, simply because if we are able to explain the why, then they get it. कि हम क्या करना चाह रहे हैं, हम ये क्यों करना चाह रहे हैं? Because for them, purpose is such an important, piece of the narrative. So sorry, I just thought I'll add a little bit more.
Amit, again, now, I wanted to ask you specifically in context of large group that Hinduja is, multinational, multi-businesses, therefore workforce that consists of multinationalities. How do one create culture of openness? More than that, important for probably all of us to know, when you create culture of openness, leaders have to give away something. How do you create that mindset in leaders? Any experiences on that?
So I think if you would have had the answer to that question, it is probably a Nobel Prize winning theory, right? Because the biggest thing that you actually have to give away in this situation is control. Yeah. Right? So again, I think what we found is you're able to build in certain enabling mechanisms to say that the way you get to being a leader going forward. So again, a lot of it otherwise has always been around personal, professional accomplishment. That's the way you recognize to say, that's the way to the top, which is continue to do what you're doing well. But I think the approach, for example, that the group is now taking is, if you define, now very often, we tend to define leaders, or what is it that defines a company. You normally talk about values, and there are 5 things you put on a wall and say, this is what it stands for, etc. Now, like you said, the group is diversified. It can be fundamentally very different, because they can mean different things in different parts of the world to different sets of people. So we've come up with just one, which we say is the hallmark of a true leader, as far as we are concerned. And that is the ability to give respect. It's just one word. And if you think of it, it's really powerful, right? Because if you have respect for someone else's time, you will finish a meeting quickly. If you have respect for someone else's intelligence, you will read a PowerPoint presentation before you come in. If you have respect for someone else's vulnerability, you will pause to ask the right question. So fundamentally, I think what we find is that the world today is a complex place. You've got to try and find ways to make things simple. So therefore, for example, the word respect, as I talked about it, there could be over 300 interpretations that we found when we discuss it in the group. But all of them are important, all of them are unique, and all of them will coexist. So we've taken just one simple thread, which is respect. Because being authentic also means respect. And as we were doing this, we heard such an interesting, powerful point that someone said, that very often, authenticity, very often we associate authenticity with being honest. But it was a very powerful example that we actually heard from a Gen Zer who said that you can be honest, but you also have to be truthful. And very often we associate the two to be the same thing. And if you go back to the Mahabharata, right, if you remember what Yudhishthir did when he said, Ashwatthama, is Ashwatthama dead, right? The answer was yes. He said, so he was honest, but he was not truthful. So how is it that you are able to distinguish between being honest? And it was a very, very powerful insight that came in. So I think the very, very long answer to your very short question is, we haven't cracked the code yet, because it's important for me to be honest and truthful. That's the only way we can be authentic. But the key is to say that keep things simple. So we've embarked on this journey to say, if you are part of the Hinduja group, there is one thing that you can expect, and there is only one thing you're expected to give, and that is respect. So we've kept it simple.
Beautiful. I wish people at large had learned this. On the respect, we would not have had the geopolitical crisis that we are having today. Reena, I heard you talking about giving them opportunities to participate in decision making. What kind of forums you need to create in the organization where the Gen Zs can actually contribute to meaningful and business outcomes?
So first and foremost, they like accessibility. Right, so Gen Zs, if you see that they want leaders to be accessible, I think one of the first things that we have to ensure is that we need to have lean structures, right? And even if because of whatever reasons we need to have those layers in our structures, we need to ensure that the leadership style which is inculcated in the behaviors of our leaders is that they are approachable, they invite discussions. So that's one of the things that we do. Another thing that we are doing in our organization, and this was that while we are running all these critical strategic projects, we are ensuring that we have one of our Gen Z members, essentially some of the management trainees, etc., who are high potential and are going through that path, participating in those cross-functional projects. And these are high-stake projects. So having someone like them in those projects has really been helpful. Generali has been doing it globally, where they have identified some of these leaders who participated in Generali's strategic projects, invited there, interacting with the leaders, etc., so that they have a voice. So that's another thing that we are doing. And second, as I said, that these fireside chats sometimes, which we do very regularly with our younger generation, including them in leadership forums, asking some of them to participate in our quarterly strategy meetings. So that's how we are really making them, and it has worked well for us. One, we get their point of view, because there are obviously a lot of we do have some blind spots in some of those areas, and some of the insights that these guys come up with are truly, truly very impactful for some of our business projects too. So yeah, that.
Fantastic.
I just wanted to add, we're a manufacturing organization and with plants which are probably 3-hour drives away from any airports. And yet, we are able to use similar principles, which is to have collabs. Each of our big significant projects at the plant have Gen Zs in it, such that we are able to bring complementary skills to the table and have them have a voice on the table and ask the why questions, like Amit was saying. So I think it's been very powerful to bring big ideas out together and co-create those rather than have the top-down approach, which is very hierarchical typically for a manufacturing-led organization.
I think another thing which I experienced in my own team is that the ability of our Gen Zs to take up large jobs is very high, because they're turning, whether it's because of AI or whatever, they turn around things very quickly, right? So the more you challenge them with jobs which are larger, which possibly a few years back you couldn't think of giving to someone with just a 1-year experience, the more you challenge them, the more you get the best out of them. And that's what we are doing, that really micro-managing the careers of some of these hypo Gen Zs, really, that's something important.
Shefali, the third most Google word I saw was work-life balance. Now, I don't know whether used or abused, but that's one of the fundamental parameters of Gen Z's personality. How do you give that and also ensure the productivity performance is maintained?
So I think, again, we are abusing it as the generation. I think there's no harm in self-care. We're probably still learning to do self-care, so it's better that they're already focused on their health, they want their naps, they want their food on time, or whatever may be that means more to them. So I think finding meaning has come to us pretty late in life, and those realizations we're still evolving with. I think Gen Z's already evolved to that an extent. I think they're not saying I'm not going to perform because I want to take the nap or I want to go for a workout. But they're saying, give me the task, and as long as we are able to be more outcome-oriented, see what the results are, I think we can give them all the flexibility they need. So it's more about conversations again, which is to say that, hey, this is what I need, this is what I want to be able to do, and by the way, these are the outcomes that I need you to be able to deliver, whether you make it 12 to 8, 6 to 9, or 3 hours or 2 hours. And because, again, our concept of time, to what Reena said, what I said earlier, that they're able to pace up outcomes so much more faster than how we did it. We believe that they need to work for 10 hours and only then it'll get delivered. But the fact is that they're probably able to give me the outcome in 4 hours, and that's what should matter at the end of the day. And I think it's a more evolution. So as more and more we experience them, probably we just didn't have it in us 20 years ago. And we're also evolving to that space to be able to want the same shared values, shared community, shared purpose for the organization. And the same pieces, if we are able to get them to understand and get the outcomes in place, that's all that is necessary.
Interesting. Mental well-being, Amit, is one of the important part of Gen Z's part of the work by itself. Are there any processes, systems that you are creating in the organization where this gets addressed?
So I think it's just that we get to hear this word now. I think a lot of people, I think, have died early, of earlier generations without recognizing that it was actually being attributed towards mental well-being. Right? So I think the fact that, again I say this, right, it's, while it may come up as a pointer in conversation with younger people because they are much more aware of what mental well-being means, I think recognizing that it is a very integral part of how people are able to live their life, and contribute at the workplace, in that order. Yeah, I think is a very important lesson that we are kind of continuing to learn in some ways. So there are two things that I think we are kind of doing. One is we're saying that if you need to seek help, right, it's not necessary that you need to seek it from within the organization. And I think why that really becomes important is whether we like it or not, every conversation in an organization will always be perceived as being evaluative or being judgmental. I think the biggest challenge with mental health is it comes with a frame of we look at it from the lens of judgment, which is it is something wrong, or it's something that's incorrect, or it's something that is a sign of weakness, like I talked of earlier. So I think two parts. One is about letting people have the comfort to say that they can seek support from wherever they need it. Preferably, I mean, our stance has been, and we've been pretty vocal about this, to say that when you need support, speak to a specialist. And with due respect, ChatGPT is not a specialist, right? So don't seek online support, right? Seek real-time support, right? Understand. So talk to a human being is point number one. I think point number two, we've worked a lot with, across generations, but with young people in specific, to recognize what do signs of anxiety actually mean. So very often, anxiety doesn't manifest itself, it manifests itself in different forms. Absolutely. So how is it that you recognize that you're feeling anxious? So do you attribute it to an increase in heart rate? Do you attribute it to a palpitation? Do you attribute it to a sudden pain that you suddenly begin to have in a part of the body that otherwise you thought was gone? It didn't exist. So sometimes, very often, recognizing that there is a difference between the symptom and the underlying issue is where we've been talking a lot to people around that. Therefore, when people come back and say, I don't want to have this conversation further, I'm experiencing anxiety now. If this happens when you are in the middle of a heated argument as a parent, it can sometimes just blow your mind because you see it as an escape hatch that they're trying to open. But once you open that, so automatically the other set of extension that we've done is to let managers be aware that when someone comes back and says this, right, sometimes it could be an escape hatch, you're right. But this is what, with due respect, if anybody's from internal audit in the audience here, I like to call this, we are trying to solve an internal audit problem, which is that you have a problem in 2% of the organization, or with 2% of people, and you paint 98% of people in the same way. Change the entire. So how is it that you're able to build trust? I think is a very key aspect of mental well-being. And as long as people are able to see that, you see that as a baseline, that you must feel good, to want to come in, is the effort that's happening. Again, it's, of course, it's an interesting job to be able to do that with 250,000 people across 30 geographies. But I think it fundamentally again comes down to the theme that I talked about, which is respect. So you say, have respect for someone's mental state. Recognize that someone can be different. And we always say, give benefit of doubt, right? Don't take the audit approach. So this is what we've been trying. This is like, honestly, Sanjay, dealing with this issue is like throwing darts at a dartboard, right?
Sure.
You've got to throw 20, 3 will stick. But if you throw 3, none will stick. So you've got to be prepared to fail, restart, get up, and start again. So that's what we're trying.
Fantastic.
Can I just add to this? Having said that, the employee assistance programs that we used to have historically earlier, the uptake for those programs was very less, right? We would sign up,
Correct.
and very few people would call the helpline or speak to those counselors. But now that openness to speak to a therapist, to speak to a counselor is high. So now when we are providing these employee assistance programs, the uptake has grown manifold. So in a few months, we had some 150 counseling sessions being booked by our employees. So telling them it's not a taboo you can talk to them about, because we want a happy employee who can contribute to the productivity of the organization. You have relationship issues, you have parenting issues, you have concerns on how to manage stress. And as leadership, sharing with them that I also booked a session because I wanted some guidance on parenting. That sets a good role modeling, and people actually uptake that. So now actually if we give them these forums, the uptakes are high. So I think as organizations, we should encourage doing that now. Because there's openness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chetna, how are you doing on time? Oh, it's here. Oh, just 2 minutes left. Can I take opportunity to ask people to ask some questions if you have any? Yes, sir.
Good morning. Hi, Sanjay. Manish Pinchal from Equirus Capital and ex-head of Tata Strategy Management Group. Question to Reena, you just mentioned, and it was running in my mind, the reverse counseling you just mentioned that for parenting. My one question is, a lot of things we all know what is right thing to do. Still, we don't do it. Right? So, what is that element makes a difference? Because I've seen so many counselors, I keep talking to many. And when you hear the response, you yourself also know, even the children know what is the right thing to do. But who's addressing that problem?
I don't know if I can answer. Let me try and answer this. It's as you said, it's what Nobel Prize winner. If I can have an answer to that question.
I'll just give that.
Yeah.
कि वो कहते हैं ना कि जो सोया है उसको जगा सकते हैं, लेकिन वो जाग के सोने की एक्टिंग करता है, it is difficult to wake him up.
No, that's true. And one of the basic principles of coaching, counseling is that the person should be ready for help. That's right. So you can't push a person into creating help. So hence that role modeling sometimes helps, having conversation helps, getting a person ready to go into counseling or coaching I think is very important, and that's the role we as family or we as managers can play, that I think you need help. Do you think this will help? I have done this myself. This is what it did for me. And for a counselor's job also is to kind of get that buy-in in the first, because you can't just get into it. So getting the person ready, I think, is important. I want to, and hence most of the conversations around development also, we tell people, right, that your development is your own responsibility. And I think that's where it starts. So unfortunately, if a person is not ready, it becomes very, very difficult. Yeah.
Well, thank you. We are just about to end our panel, but I want to do a little different thing. As I walked in this morning, Ruhi, I met a very interesting Gen Z man, all of 20, at the counter. And when I got chatting with him, he has already written one book. The title, I think, is Beyond Business. Now, the sermon that went from here, is Johan in crowd? Johan, can I invite you here? I want to check whether the sermons that went from here, is he able to relate to that, or he has an entirely different perspective. I don't know Johan from Adams, but I just happened to chat with him. Yeah, please come here. Yeah. So we'll see whether what we are cooking for that generation, whether there is a part of that their menu or not. Come sit here. So Johan, you heard the esteemed leaders talk about a lot of prescriptive, suggestive solutions. Do you relate to them? And first of all, tell us about your book and what was the book about?
So, hi everyone, I'm Johan. I wrote a book called Beyond Business. Most of you all will have a question, how come at such a young age you've written a book? I think when I look at business, I think of something that you should go beyond the idea of a business. You should think of something that will give an advantage to the entire human race, to think of something that can help others. And I think that's what I wrote in my book. I found 10 businesses that actually look beyond themselves. For example, SpaceX. They don't just look at their own advantages. They look at helping the human race go beyond what it's capable of and to actually achieve something. And I think that's what business is about, and that's what I wrote about in my book.
Thank you so much. And do you relate to what these ladies and gentlemen spoke?
Definitely, I did relate to a lot of things that I heard on this panel, for sure. Such as, we hate being, as a generation, we hate being judged or put in a box. We hate being confined to a small space and being told to do a certain thing. But one thing that's important is that we love being shown the way. We want to be shown the way to do something that we want to do and to do it the right way. I think, of course, one of the sponsors, Limniel, I did the exercise a few days ago, And I think something I understood from this wheel is that it reverse engineers the actual idea of finding a career for our generation, obviously. What I learned from it is that it does not just calculate what career you need to pick. It helps you calculate your virtues and your strengths, and it helps you learn what you will be capable of doing by yourself. And I think if companies actually use this scale to employ people from Gen Z, it would be a wonderful thing because it helps us as a generation to know what we want to do and what we are capable of doing.
Thank you, Johan. I think my job is done. I thought just best way to end the discussion is to get this vetted by somebody for whom we are prescribing this. And therefore, authenticity, openness in communication, purpose, work-life balance that we spoke about is all seen here. And he's saying his only way to look at world is to what businesses can do beyond business. And I think that's what I think Gen Z is expecting. And if we as managers are able to get that perspective and stitch that in our day-to-day work that they come for, I think we'll create winning organization. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
That was really an engaging panel discussion. May I now request Dr. Adil Malia to present the mementos to our speakers as a token of our appreciation.
Glad you could come and explain.
To Ms. Reena Tyagi. To Ms. Reena Tyagi, thank you, ma'am, for taking out time. To Dr. Sanjay Muthal. He's mixing. I request Johan also to be on the dais.
At 20, I would have not gone on the stage in front of the audience and spoken. This is amazing. And this is new India for us.
Thank you, Ms. Kohli. Thank you, Ms. Tyagi. Thank you, Mr. Chincholikar, for being here.